the charge against me and Brazil, or against me, because I apparently acted for Lina Joy, was that I was anti-Islam. And no less than the Prime Minister made that charge. And that showed, I suppose, the level of desperation at that point. But factually, they got it wrong, by the way. I never acted for Lina Joy. I was Malaysian Bar President at that time, and when the judgment came out, I issued a statement on the law in relation to that judgment. That was my connection. But even if I had acted for Lina Joy, let me explain the Lina Joy case for those who may not know. Lina Joy converted or sought to convert out of Islam and sought to embrace Christianity. Am I right? Am I right about getting it wrong? She did convert. She did convert. Yes, she professed the religion of Christianity. And then there was an issue in relation to her identity card. She tried to get it changed in her identity card and failed. So the case went right up to the federal court. It was there was a lot of emotion surrounding that case. And finally the decision was that she could not convert out. So it's a sensitive issue because the issue of apostasy is a sensitive issue in Malaysia. And so the charge was that because I acted for Lina Joy, which was an error, that I believed in apostasy and therefore was anti-Islam. I don't know whether you can follow the dots because I feel I stopped following the dots and acting for Lina Joy. And that was what they kept throwing at me. So that was another charge. As I said, if all else fails, use religion. But it didn't work. It didn't work. They were trying to get parts to turn around. Oh yeah, by the way, I was also what Hindu woman? Dangerous Hindu woman. That was the other thing. So they also took me apart on my religion. So that was the extent and the depths to which they sank. But the Rakyat didn't sink to that level. Instead, because of all that, on the 9th of July, and by the way, on the 9th of July, when I heard about the roadblocks, they also got court orders against all of us to stop us going into the city, which all of us were, of course, going to breach. But we couldn't, by the way, we were arrested before we could. They blocked the roadblocks, etc. So I was going through in my mind how I was going to respond to the press when they said to me, look, the turnout was really bad, only 500 got something. So I was working out in my mind, I was going to blame the government, your roadblocks, and be frightening everybody, and making up that speech in my mind. And then I went back home that night after I was arrested and I was released, I was tear gassed, etc. Went back home and then I started reading the reports and I couldn't believe my eyes, okay? Really brought tears to my eyes that the Malaysian public who went out there, I mean, we think 50,000, but a lot of people think it was more than 50,000. And I just don't know how they did it. I understand many people actually went in there, stayed a few days. I think people also went in, not wearing yellow, went in as shoppers, etc. And they all just came out at 2 o'clock on the 9th of July. And I can tell you, it wasn't politicians who were there. It wasn't past supporters who were there. It was ordinary Rakyat of Malaysia who were out there. And that is what they can't stomach. Recently, the Prime Minister, I don't know if you heard about the Himpun rally, which was a rally that was held just this Saturday about apostasy. I mean, by Muslim groups about apostasy. I'm not quarrel with them, with people assembling peacefully. That's their right. But there were 5,000 people who turned out. It was a government-supported function. And the Prime Minister comes out and says, you see, it was peaceful, Himpun was so much better than Bersih, and why Bursi was chaos, etc., etc., etc. This is the problem. They just don't get it. That's my quarrel with them. They're not getting it. Here they are, ignoring more than 50,000 Rakyat who were out that day, and many more who supported Bursi without being out there. They failed to realize that Malaysians had reached a tipping point, a point in their lives when they felt enough is enough. We don't like the politics that is being played by this government. So that's what they don't get. They also don't get that the reason the numbers swelled was because of their reaction. They also don't get that there was chaos that day, not because of us, but because of them. The other thing they'll say is, oh, you have ruined our image overseas. That's another thing they don't get. We didn't ruin their image overseas. They did. They ruined their own image. They ruined the image of the government by overreacting and mishandling Bursi in the manner that they did. But they still continue to do that. Not too long ago, someone again raised in Parliament, are you going to charge these people and investigate their accounts? And the minister says, yes, we are still investigating. They don't want to let up. They don't want to accept that they made a mistake with Bursi. Now, Malaysians have the talent and the resources to be the very best. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And we certainly deserve better. We don't deserve dishonesty. We don't deserve corruption. We don't deserve flawed institutions, wastage, oppression. And we don't need people who promote this and practice this to tell us that we were wrong to go out that day and ask for free and fair elections. Now, we Malaysians are capable of a lot. We have fantastic talent. We have great resources. You only, as I said, you only need to Google Bursi and look at the things that they have come up with, the songs they have written, the videos they have put together. We really need to elevate our national discourse. We have to stop talking about sodomy. By the way, some children have actually grown from infancy to adulthood with sodomy every day in the papers. Just in case they forgot sodomy 1, we immediately had sodomy 2, so that our children never forget that word and the graphic details that present itself in the case. Now, what about sex videos? That's another thing. Molestation, suggestions of molestation. The Chief Minister of Penang, his son, is attacked. 16-year-old boy with lies. They produced a photograph of a chess champion. I don't know where this poor child's photograph turned up. And it was produced with an allegation that the Chief Minister's son molested her. Till today, there is no apology from anyone. Instead, the Deputy Prime Minister not too long ago comes out and says the Chief Minister should make a police report. Police report about what? There's no truth to the allegations. It's been proven. They should apologize. But that is the level of their politics. And Malaysians are truly fed up with that. We want to talk about our budget. By the way, I can give you another hour's lecture on the budget, but I won't bore you with that. Because if ever there was an election budget, that's it, okay? It looks like one, it sounds like one, but the government comes out and says, it's not an election budget. It's a very responsible budget. I may be giving 500 ringgit like Santa Claus, but it is a very responsible budget. It is not an election budget. Now, we really have to change things as the Raja. I think it lies in our hands. And Berse has shown that we can do it. Berse has shown that we are not afraid of their intimidation. Berse has shown that the bogeyman of the 13th of May no longer exists. They can't keep using that against us. Berse also has shown that their attempts to divide us racially and using religion will not work anymore. That's the beauty of Berse. Berse doesn't belong to one person or two people. It belongs to the rakyat. It lives here in the hearts and the minds of the people, which is why they can do whatever they want, declare it illegal, they can, do anything. They can't kill Berse. And the sooner they realize that, the better for them. But unfortunately, they don't realize. They still haven't woken up to that fact. Now let me read something for you. I don't know if you know that someone, Nathaniel has come out with a book called The 9th of July. And this is what a father wrote. And I keep reading this over and over again. It is by Da Huang Daddy, he calls himself. And this is what he says Berse meant to him. He said, Daddy has sung the national anthem perhaps close to 1,000 times since my childhood. But this time, why did Nagaraku sound so sweet? It was not accompanied by any music. There were different pitches and tones, and even wrong tones with weird accents. Daddy has lived in this country for 34 years, and there has not been a moment like that during 709, where I felt the meaning of Malaysia. Remember, at this historical moment, Daddy chose to stand with this yellow crowd, not for any other reason, but just to let you have a better country. And that's what Berse too was about. Because and where are we now? We have some attempts to bring change. We will have to see. I'm not convinced because the government, although they have set up the PSC, the Parliamentary Select Committee, has said that it may not, the 13 general elections may be called even before they finish their work, which means there is no guarantee that electoral reform will take place before the next general elections. Which is why Berse too has now launched their new campaign, Clean Before 13. And we have to put pressure on the government to ensure that the next elections will take place only after the reforms take place. And let me tell you, the 8 reforms that we have asked for can be achieved, can take place before the next general elections. So what was, and which is why, by the way, we must keep the pressure on. Now I'm not going to go into the 8 demands, you can ask me questions after this. But what I will say, I will only talk about the electoral role. Now the Election Commission kept saying there's nothing wrong with the electoral role. And this is the beauty of Berse, you see. It's percolated, and the rakyat, the citizens of Malaysia, have taken over the movement. Because after Berse, almost on a daily basis, there were reports in the online media about errors in the electoral roll. So the rakyat are now the eyes and ears of Berse. They are now holding the EC to account. And today, I got an SMS alert. So every day, there were errors seen. Because in Malaysia, by the way, deaf people can vote, or have been able to vote. We have to ensure that that stops. So all those things are taking place now. Today, in an SMS alert, it stated that the Election Commission has highlighted 40,000 names which could prove to be problematic. Now, why couldn't they have done all this before? They never did any of this before Brexit took place. In fact, they were saying there's nothing wrong with the electoral roll. That was the stand that they were taking. But this is what has happened. And the beauty about Brexit is that on the 9th of July, it really was no more about just electoral reform. It was about democracy, it was about justice, it was about Malaysians standing up to abuse of power. And that was the beauty of Brexit too. And I close with these words from the lady herself, and I don't think I could say it better. If one asks the question, why did the government react in the way that they did? And I quote her, and this is her famous quote, Aung San Suu Kyi, when she said, "It is not power that corrupts, but fear. Fear of losing power corrupts those who wield it, and fear of the scourge of power corrupts those who are subject to it." Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.